I'm Jerry Orton. I'm with the Lower Downtown Neighborhood Association. We got just a few seconds before we start this program. I just wanted to make people aware of the Respect the Ride that's under consideration by the RTD board. It's a new code of conduct that the RTD board is considering in June, and you can find out about it online. I urge you to check it out. We're here in District A of RTD board member Michael Guzman, and from Lawrence to the south, it's RTD District C, and that's Katie Williams. So those are the people you want to be in touch with. Okay, who's next with this microphone? David. Let me introduce David Mazzocchi, who is on the Lower Downtown Neighborhood Association board.
Well, Jerry, you ruined the surprise. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the audience, and welcome to our candidates, Chris Hines and Shannon Hoffman, and obviously to our moderator, Michael Spencer. He promised me he wasn't going to read sports tonight. Here we're here to experience democracy in action. And this particular event, just like we did the first debate, is a collaboration between UpDoNA and the Lower Downtown Neighborhood Association. And so we hope you enjoy tonight, and we want everybody to go away informed. And now I'm going to introduce my counterpart, Lisa Pope. Lisa.
Is this on? Sorry. So anyway, I'm Lisa Pope. I'm president of the Upper Downtown Neighborhood Association. Thanks so much for attending. I see some familiar faces from last time, so thank you for coming again. I want to thank all of our volunteers who helped set this up and contacted the candidates and help prepare questions. So I want to thank everyone there. Special thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for allowing us to use this space and assisting us with the setup. We're excited to host Chris and Shannon again. We're looking forward to the debate tonight. And David already introduced Michael, but this is Michael Spencer. He's the evening anchor at CBS Colorado, Channel 4. And we appreciate that he was able to take some time off from his busy desk job to be here this evening. So we're going to get started. Thank you.
And with that, we will get started. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I'd like to take a minute to introduce our candidates. The audience will have one opportunity for applause after I introduce both candidates, so please hold your applause. But if you would, please welcome Chris Hines, who is the incumbent for District 10, and Shannon Hoffman. Let's talk about the plans for tonight before we get started. Each candidate will be given a chance to introduce yourselves for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. We encourage you to tell us about yourselves, what you see as the top priorities that need to be addressed downtown, and why you believe that you are the best candidate to address those issues. After that, I'll ask a series of pre-prepared questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer the same question. After the question has been answered by both candidates, each candidate will have the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal. After that, I will move to the next question. I'll alternate the order in which the candidates respond. At the end of the pre-prepared questions, you will each be allowed to ask your opponent 2 questions, alternating between the 2 of you. Again, responses will be limited to 2.5 minutes. This debate is expected to last 90 minutes, and we will not be planning a break. The audience is encouraged to leave quietly if you do need to use the restroom during the debate. At the end of the evening, each candidate will have 2.5 minutes for closing remarks as well. With that being said, let's get started. The problems that concern residents and businesses downtown as relate to UpDoNA and LoDoNA by members in several downtown businesses fall mainly into 3 categories. There are also the primary areas of emphasis for UpDoNA and LoDoNA. Those categories include homelessness, drug addiction, and mental illness, crime and its impact on safety, and downtown's economic recovery, and reopening of businesses. The questions we'll be asking reflect a desire to understand your plans to address these issues in downtown Denver. A few rules before we do get started tonight for our crowd. The audience is asked to refrain from applauding or making any verbal comments whatsoever during the debate. Please remember we've gathered here together to hear from Shannon and Chris and not from you. Candidates are also asked not to comment or interrupt one another. And we do have a tight timeline for tonight, so answers will be timed. A nonverbal 30-second notice will be given, followed by a nonverbal notice that your time is up. Please end your answer promptly at that time, and candidates are asked to avoid generalities and to provide specific, comprehensive answers to questions. At this time, I'd like to have the candidates give their opening statements. Candidates, please remember that you will each have 2.5 minutes for your opening statements, and we'll begin with you, Chris.
Great. Hi, my name is Chris Hines. I serve on Denver City Council representing District 10. I am the first elected official in Denver's history who uses a wheelchair for mobility. I think our democracy is stronger when it's representative of all the people, and we've never had disability representation before in Denver elected office. I recognize that that as a candidate in 2018 and 2019, a lot of people asked, "Can I be more than just the disability candidate?" And I would say, well, of course, I need access, but we all need access. We need access to housing, we need access to transportation, we need access to representation. And to use the points that Michael mentioned, I was going to say Mr. Spencer, I'm used to the formality of elected office. We all need access to housing, we need access to safety, and economic vitality. So I am very excited to be here tonight. I'm very excited to talk about homelessness, crime, and downtown activation, and my particular positions and policies. Please go to chrisfordenver.com to learn more about me and my positions, and I would love to have your support and your vote.
Shannon.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Hoffman. I'm a candidate for Denver City Council District 10. I am here because I truly love our community and our neighbors. I am an educator, a community collaborator, and an affordable housing expert. I am not a typical politician. I have never ran for office before. I come from a working class background. So I've been an educator for more than a decade, and in Denver I have worked multiple jobs, including many retail jobs to make ends meet, and some of that has been at a small local business, Hope Tank. I have also spent years collaborating with our neighbors, and I hear your frustrations because I feel them myself. We have experienced years of inaction from our leaders, and we need something to change in our community. My neighbors are the motivation for this because we share a lot of similar experiences. Like 70% of people in this district, I am a renter, and because of that, we face many challenges. Recently, I just had my water turned off because my landlord didn't pay the bill. So we see people with lots of lived experience that brings policy expertise, and those are the issues that I plan to bring to halls of power. I also have the tenacity to really get things done. After a decade as an educator, I started working at a nonprofit where we brought to fruition an affordable housing and grocery store project on a former RTD park and ride site. It's a multi-million-dollar affordable housing project. I love bringing neighbors together to learn about local government and how to advocate, and that's why I started a program called How Shit Gets Done in Denver. And I hope that you will see through this work that community collaboration and accountability are not just talking points for me, they are values that are extremely important to me. And I want you to know that you can always count on me to back up my words with actions. You can count on me to take your worries to heart, and you can count on me to have integrity with my word connected to action. I will champion data-driven solutions around affordable housing, transportation, and what truly keeps us healthy, safe, and free. We need a council person who will listen, collaborate, and fight alongside with us. I'm Shannon Hoffman, and I'm here to earn your vote for Denver City Council.
I'll now ask a series of 8 questions. For each, I'll give a short introduction, and I'll ask the question for the first candidate to answer, and then the other candidate. Following that, each candidate will have 1 minute for a rebuttal. I'll alternate the order in which candidates answer those questions. Question 1 concerns ways to attract businesses to the downtown area. Downtown Denver has long been a critical economic driver for the city of Denver and the state of Colorado. In recent years, we've lost many businesses, large and small, with vacant storefronts, offices, and warehouses evident to all who travel our streets. So the question is, which role do you see for the Denver City Council, and specifically District 10 councilperson, in attracting businesses to downtown with related jobs and revenue generation to support all of the city's programs? What specifically would you advocate for? We'll start with Shannon.
Thanks so much for this question, and I really like the language of it because advocate is exactly what we need. We need someone in our district who will take a leadership position on these issues, and that is who I am and why I am applying for this position. So one of the big issues I think you're bringing up here is that we see a lot of mixed-use development where then we have a lot of empty space on the ground floor level. And that is really affecting our safety because we don't have a lot of eyes on the street or street level activation. I just came from a meeting before this with folks in the Golden Triangle area who are losing one of their only child care centers in that area. And so, you know, that is one of the things that I would advocate for because young people are the people that our city should be for and should be centered on. We should not be creating a playground for folks. We need an ecosystem for our elders, for families, for children, for all people in our community. The other piece of this is around, you know, attracting and keeping small legacy businesses, right? What we are seeing, especially around 16th Street Mall, is that our local businesses are not able to stay in place. But we're also seeing that large corporate businesses are not able to stay in place. But I really believe who we need to be championing here are these small businesses. You can go to Starbucks anywhere. Why you come to Denver is to visit these unique, iconic spaces. And those spaces are also providing a third space for community members. Often we might need to be providing these small businesses with rental assistance. We need to be communicating with them when we're doing large projects like what we're doing on the 16th Street Mall. A lot of those businesses haven't received sufficient communication to know how to move forward. All of this is informed by my personal experiences working with small business owners and advocating alongside community members, and it's about bringing forward the vision our community has for downtown.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I too am not a career politician. I have an undergraduate in computer science and MBA in finance. I set and managed the budget for a global software company for years before becoming an elected official. One of the things that we have to do is, in the business world and certainly in the public policy world as well, is have nice things. But we also have to maintain those nice things. And we built an amazing 16th Street Mall 50 years ago, but back in 1982. But we didn't do a great job of maintaining it. So I'm proud to say that I voted for the $160 million renovation of the 16th Street Mall and was there at the groundbreaking ceremony for the 16th Street Mall. Of course, maintenance takes time. And that's what we're in right now. So we had, unfortunately, we had COVID that created a lot of economic uncertainty downtown and created the start of the exodus of a lot of the buildings or a lot of the retail establishments downtown. But then the construction right now on the mall makes it tough for us to really keep all the businesses in the 16th Street Mall alive and vibrant. And Anthony and I were actually just talking about this right before the debate, so it's clear that this is an important topic. He mentioned we need something more than just that pop-up program, and I totally agree. But we should start with a pop-up program. The pop-up program was just a plan to incubate 5 businesses on the mall, give them a small economic incentive to go to the mall, and we learned a lot of lessons. We learned that people who've never operated a retail storefront are not good at operating retail storefronts. So we're going to do round 2, and we're going to expand that and have more people in the round 2 program so that we can learn more lessons. By then, once round 2 is finished, the 16th Street Mall will be close to completion. And then we have the plan to invest millions of dollars, learning from rounds 1 and 2 of the pop-up program to truly, once the mall is complete, to make sure that we have that full economic benefit and reestablish businesses on the mall.
You'll now each have 1 minute for a rebuttal. Shannon, we'll start with you.
Thanks. I do agree that we should have nice things, and everyone deserves nice things. Poor people deserve nice things. People that are struggling to keep their businesses deserve nice things. Everyone in our community deserves access to all of the nice amenities that we have in our city. So we're talking about, the 16th Street Mall and how, yes, there's a challenge around that we're doing construction on it to try to make it nicer. But part of a council person's job is to communicate with those business owners. Another part of the job is also to advocate when we see that these pop-up programs aren't working and aren't keeping businesses in place. What are we doing after providing this entrepreneurial uplift to keep businesses here?
Chris, 1 minute to you.
Yeah, so I think it's great that we're learning lessons from round 1 of the pop-up program. That's why we're doing a round 2, also a trial run of the pop-up program. And certainly we should do, in addition to business incentives, we should make sure that we have proper childcare for those who are working in corporate offices downtown. And I live 2 blocks from the childcare center that's closing. We need to make sure that parents have a way to succeed professionally, as well as make sure that our future generations are taken care of. And so we're working with not only that particular facility and the parents we're in constant communication with the parents that have been affected, because a few are Golden Triangle residents, a few are District 10 residents, but many of them work downtown. And so we're doing our best to learn lessons there, just like we're learning lessons from the pop-up program to get more people access to childcare.
With that, we'll move on to question 2, which is about support and staffing of the Denver Police Department. Staffing levels of the DPD have not kept pace with the increase in population. We do have slightly different questions for each of you tonight. We'll start with Chris. In your interview with the Downtown Denver Partnership, you answered yes to the question, do you support expansion of the Denver Police Department? And you voted to increase DPD funding. Could you please explain the intent of the increased funding and expansion?
Yeah, so I want to be clear that we should lead with compassion. I have been a huge proponent of the STAR program, which has been I believe, very successful. I helped with the pilot. I helped fund the pilot. I helped fund the initial launch of STAR and the 2 expansions of STAR. And that is sending a paramedic and a social worker to addiction and mental health calls and keeping the police out of that entirely. But I do agree that we should have a police department. I believe that we should have a funded police department, and we want to make sure that at the end of the day, people who are victims of domestic violence or rape. I had a very difficult conversation with a constituent in Cheeseman Park today who said his girlfriend was raped by someone experiencing homelessness just in the last month. And he said, and I talked to him about leading with compassion, and he said, at this point, I don't care about compassion. We need public safety in our city. And so when I said I support the funding of the police department, we need to make sure that we can have public health, safety, and welfare. That is the city's core role. And we can't have public health, safety, and welfare without public safety. We have a couple public safety officers here in the room, and they would be the first to tell you that a lot of the public safety budget is investing in social determinants of health, like the STAR program, like the AIDS Center, the Alternative Intake Diversion Center. That's paid for out of the public safety budget. But those folks who are helping us make sure that we have a public health, safety, and welfare in our city, they're city employees too. And we need to make sure that we respect them, we lift them up, and we allow them to do the jobs that they were hired to do in our city. And since I have 30 more seconds, I'll say another thing that we're doing as far as the police department is making sure that every officer that we hire has the same ethics and morals that we want as the people of Denver, and that the composition of our recruiting classes reflect the composition of our city, as in they, the last, thank you.
Thank you for paying attention to the time. Shannon, separate question for you, but when asked about the support of the Denver Police Department during the February 16th candidate forum at the Home to Suites, you described yourself as an abolitionist. Please explain exactly what you would do with the police department.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the opportunity to educate and share what the word abolition means to me, especially as someone who has spent the majority of my career as an educator. It's extremely important. I actually, after one of these forums, got to share with someone one of my favorite books, which is called We Do This Till We Free Us by the abolitionist Miriam Kaba. As I said last time, this word might be a scary word to some folks, but I am not here to scare you, and that's not what this is about. Abolition is truly about what one of our local elected says. Abolition is about what keeps us all healthy, safe, and free, right? And so abolition is also about economic security. It is also about housing security. It is also about food security. Being an abolitionist is about looking toward the horizon of the future that I hope that maybe even I will not get to live in. But it is about planting seeds of the world that we want to live in. It makes me emotional because we should dream of a different world and we should work for it. And we should also require that our leaders think that way, that they think beyond just putting out the fires, that they think about the future that you want for your children. So what does that mean here in real time? It means that 17% of the calls that we get to Denver, to 911, are related to crime. And so that 17% should be addressed. And the rest should be addressed around the public health and safety issues that we see, right? So when we're saying that we have folks that are helping to fund STAR, that's an up or down vote, okay? That's not going to city council budget meetings and advocating that we have more money in this program. That is a simple up or down vote. And we need to advocate for what truly keeps us healthy, safe, and free, and for what is the majority of the issues in our city, which is around mental health and physical safety.
Chris, your rebuttal.
Yeah, so I totally agree that we should have health and safety. I think we can promote economic security while still having actual security. And as an example of economic security, when COVID hit in March of 2020, by April of 2020, I advocated for and we voted to add $2 million for rental and utility assistance for the more than 100,000 people in Denver who are SNAP recipients. 1 in 3 Denverites are recipients of Denver Human Services supports. So there are a lot of folks who are in need, and so in April I voted for another $2 million of rental and utility assistance, just as one example. In June we voted for another $2 million. In August we voted for another $4 million. So we can invest in economic assistance while still funding an actual police department.
Shannon?
Housing is actual security, and you know that when you are forced to live outside or you're evicted from your home. So economic security and housing security is actual security. And advocating for $2 million for rental assistance is just not enough to the scale of the problem we're talking about, especially when we're seeing that over 1,100 people were evicted from their homes this past March. What we need is a steady stream of rental assistance. What we also need is eviction defense for every single person living in our city, which Councilman Hines would not come out and support with grassroots advocates. And what we also need is to not have resources be held from people in a place like the AIDS Center where people have to be booked before they receive those services.
We'll now move on to question 3, which relates to your positions on safe injection sites. Prior to the flood of fentanyl and P2P meth, Denver City Council approved what are often referred to as safe injection sites. These sites have been forbidden at the federal and state level, so Denver has not opened one. While supporters claim they prevent overdose among addicts, critics say these sites normalize drug use and encourage it rather than fighting the drug epidemic. So our question is, do you believe Denver should have one or more of these safe injection sites? Shannon, we'll start with you.
Yes, I do believe that we should have a safe injection site. And I do believe that we are going to have to do some work to fight for that, as we have missed that opportunity at the state level. But that does not preclude us from fighting for that here at the local level. There are lots of folks here in our city that are experts on this issue. They include the Harm Reduction Action Center and also Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. I have learned from those folks that safe injection sites are amazing facilities that keep people alive, and the only way that someone can ever have an opportunity to change their life, should they choose, is by staying alive. So CCJRC had the opportunity to visit one of these safe injection sites in New York City, where it's a multi-level building. People have access to mental health services. They have access to signing up for medical health care. They have access to acupuncture. What they have also found is that that there have been no overdoses in these facilities, so people are staying alive, and also they are loved by their neighbors. And we see that here in Denver with Harm Reduction Action Center. Harm Reduction Action Center got an award from Capitol Hill United Neighbors as one of the best neighborhood collaborator groups, right? When we are talking about people who use drugs, we are talking about our neighbors. We're talking about many people that you know, and you just may not know it. You may not know the kind of support that they desperately need. And when we are talking about not supporting those folks, we may not know how we are continuing to isolate them from our communities. So safe injection sites are a way to bring people closer in our community and get them the support that they need.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So it's interesting that CCJRC went to New York City and learned a bit more about the safe injection site there. All of the supportive services sound just like our diversion center. So I'm a little confused as to why my colleague here is talking about not supporting the diversion center, yet is lifting up basically everything in the diversion center except for the injection site. But back to the question itself, the Harm Reduction Action Center is in District 10, and I have spent a fair amount of time in front of, or with, actually I can't get into the current Harm Reduction Action Center location. I did go into the original one, and while I am supportive of HRAC as it is currently configured, I'm not sure I'm excited about based on the information that I have now, the idea of having a safe injection site here in our city. There's a reason why the bill that was introduced here in the state General Assembly was defeated. And that's because the people who've been doing the deep dives and the experts keep considering it and keep rejecting it at the state level. So I trust that our state counterparts did the research, and for what it's worth, when it was legalized here in the city, that was before this class took office. So I had no involvement in the legalization of safe injection sites here in the city of Denver.
Shannon, you'll have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Thanks. Just because, again, this was defeated at the state level does not mean that it's not incumbent on us to do exactly what is required for our neighbors. And you can see that throughout history. You can see that throughout our Colorado history, that when folks wanted Martin Luther King Day, they had to come back years and years and years for that because they knew that that was what was right for their neighbors. So if we have to come back over and over and over again to argue for what is right for our neighbors, I am very happy and proud to do that.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm happy to have the conversation each year as it comes to council. I'm happy to do the deep dive. Just because it works one year doesn't mean it works the next year, and vice versa. And also, I do want to share, I too have common roots, and I was never unsheltered, unhoused. I did spend time living out of a car. I lived in a parishioner's extra bedroom. I grew up in rural Texas in the Bible Belt. We did spend time living in a church. We moved a lot because mom couldn't pay rent. And so while I do not know the struggle of each individual who's living unhoused on our streets today, I do know my own struggle. And I have spent more time, particularly during the pandemic, interacting, learning the stories of our unhoused far more than I've learned the stories of those who are living in our penthouses in District 10.
With that, we'll move on to question 4, which is about the Together We Will program. Last fall, the Downtown Denver Partnership, Mayor Hancock and the City and Council of Denver, the Denver Police Department, Colorado State Attorney General, U.S. Attorney for the State of Colorado, the Denver Fire Department, RTD Transit Police, and other partners began the Together We Will initiative. The purpose is to address immediate health and safety concerns downtown and to facilitate long-term solutions for the betterment of downtown businesses, and people who live downtown. Initial efforts in the Convention Center corridor have had success. So the question is, do you support the Together We Will program and the allocation of resources to advance its efforts? Would you like to see it expanded to other parts of the downtown area? And Chris, we'll start with you.
I think Together We Will is great. I was there at the press conference. I'll admit I didn't know anything about it before the press conference, but certainly when I went to the press conference, I said this is very interesting that we have such a interdepartmental and interagency and interlevel cooperation. And so having the U.S. Attorney for the State of Colorado partner with RTD Chief of Police and the Denver Chief of Police and the Denver Mayor and the Executive Branch, what I learned there is we are finding the ways to make sure that our city and specifically our city center is its best version of itself. That we can make sure that we have economic vitality, that we have a sense of safety and security, as well as actual safety and security, and by involving the federal level, we can use federal laws to prosecute gun crimes that, for whatever reason, our state law is not strong enough to allow us to fully prosecute. So, in case you don't know, we are funding city attorneys that are on loan to our federal counterparts so that they can use federal law to prosecute gun crimes because we don't have the same effectiveness using state or local laws. And as you mentioned in your question, it has had a very positive effect already in the safety and security of downtown, and we haven't seen that it has a significant negative effect to our underserved communities either. So it's taking people who have guns, who shouldn't have guns, off, taking those guns off the street, and so I see a lot of positive benefit. and not a huge detrimental effect for any community, particularly our unserved.
Shannon?
So I was paying very close attention to this press conference, and one of the things that I noticed was both who was there and also who wasn't there. And it's really interesting when you know people's stories and you care about people who are unhoused and you care about people who are harmed, you notice when they are there and when they are not, and when they are not, you advocate for them and you ask why aren't they there. So there weren't people that were unhoused that were participating in this forum. There weren't advocates that were participating in this forum, and that deeply concerns me. When we're having a conversation about health and safety, and we're talking about people that are harmed, that are at the center of the pain, they need to be a part of the conversation. And everyone needs to be a part of the conversation. The people that live in the communities, certainly. But those folks closest to the pain need to be there. What also happened around this period of time is that about 1,000 people were arrested, and the majority of them were arrested not for committing a crime, not for active drug use, but simply for having drug paraphernalia on their person. And that is not necessarily eradicating, crime from the area. So if this program truly addresses health and safety, right, around the basic things that we need, around bathrooms, around trash services, around providing mental health services to people, around providing housing services to people, certainly I can be supportive of that. And even, if there are things that are about it that concern me, I will still come to the table, because that is the responsibility of people who are advocates, when we agree and when we don't agree, to come to the table and have the conversation. But those are some of the concerns that I saw as this press conference came forward.
Chris, you'll now have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you. So before I became an elected official, I was an advocate for the disability community. Often people talk about the disability and don't include the disability community. So the phrase that the disability community says is nothing about us without us. I felt very strongly about that in everything that I do. I believe it's my obligation as an elected official to hear from as many perspectives as possible. So that is how I've held my my office. I've certainly, when I've heard that there are issues that don't involve the underserved. When I had a town hall for people experiencing homelessness, we had 700 people there in the virtual town hall. I had Stella, an unhoused a trans woman who lives right there at Maury at the time in a tent. I had her present as well, which apparently was very controversial. But that's the right thing to do, is to make sure everyone is there at the table.
Shannon, 1 minute to you.
In addition to being at the table, we also have to have room for folks to also advocate, create policy, and change situations that are harmful. We have also had folks from the disability justice community share that people in sweeps of unhoused neighbors are having their wheelchairs taken and crushed in the trash, and we have asked for advocacy from our council person, and it has not happened. We have had folks from the disability community say that people with disabilities are being barred from coming into shelters, and again have asked for that support, and it does not happen. So we can come to the table, but when we come to the table, we have to take action.
The next question is regarding mitigation of shelter impacts on surrounding communities. Shelters are an integral and necessary part of the struggle against homelessness, but they often bring with them impacts on the surrounding communities. In the case of the Aloft Hotel, significant drug use and dealing, often tied directly to Aloft residents, was reported by nearby residents and businesses. Hundreds of tents have also been seen around other shelters like the Crossroads shelter. So the question is, what would you implement to effectively minimize the negative impacts of shelters on the surrounding communities? And Shannon, we'll start with you.
Thanks. I think this is a really important question because one of the top things that a council person does is review contracts and give them an up or down vote, and also in committee have conversation about are the parameters of this contract being met. So a lot of times with shelters and with services, we are implementing contracts through the city. So I definitely think that we need council people that will advocate when we are hearing, right, that there are situations that are not going well within the shelters. And we also have to remember that often in these situations, the people who are most vulnerable, the people who are experiencing the most harm are the people who are unhoused themselves in that situation. I'm totally a proponent of us creating some type of dashboard where we can look at the various contracts that we have related to shelters and housing and homelessness so that we can assess the effectiveness of those contracts. And we can also push back and say, you know what, you're not meeting the parameters of this contract and we need to see some changes in that before we can renew it again. In terms of, talking about the SOS sites that are being discussed. Safe outdoor sites, there was a really great article in the Colorado Sun that showed the data that there have been no incidents of violence, there have been no incidents of drug activity at these safe outdoor sites. They're very safe alternative, but I also think that we need to be thinking beyond safe outdoor sites. We need to be thinking beyond shelters. It's in the title. It's an SOS. It's an emergency shelter, and it often can be an inefficient use of these housing and homelessness tax dollars because it's just providing a pass-through. We need to look at things like master leasing, where the city becomes the master lessor and houses folks and can support them on a path to stability.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The question specifically mentions the Aloft Hotel, and I know that I heard from a lot of people who are in this room and a lot of other people downtown about the Aloft. As the people who reached out to my office know about the Aloft Hotel, I did advocate. Sometimes we advocate publicly, sometimes we advocate behind the scenes. I had been advocating for the residents of the Aloft since last August. And I can document that with some of the communications that I've had with some of the people here in this room. And I'm very happy to say that one of the things that I can do to minimize the negative impacts on the residents is that we found placement for every Aloft resident as we decommissioned that particular location. So we can have nice things as in areas next to the convention center. We can also have nice things as in compassion treatment for those who are most vulnerable and most in need. And that decommissioning of the Aloft Hotel is an example of how we did both. As far as the larger question of minimizing the negative impacts on shelters, the location that we have placed for our safe outdoor spaces have often been in, other than the Park Hill site, have often been in areas that had minimal residents in that surrounding area. And so the first two safe outdoor spaces were in District 10, and I know that I disagree with some of the people here in this organization, but I too am a proponent of the safe outdoor spaces, and so we placed the first two in District 10, partly because I said that that's the right thing to do, for us to have a temporary but necessary place in our spectrum of homelessness. 540 people have gone through the Safe Outdoor Space program. 180 of them have found permanent housing. So that is a success. That is minimizing negative impacts on the surrounding community. It's also maximizing the benefit for those who are most in need. And it clearly demonstrates that that is a necessary component of our program.
Shannon, you only have 1 minute for a robot.
I think if you've been advocating on this since August, it's interesting to me because those folks at the Aloft Hotel were not housed until Housekeys Action Network Denver stepped in and advocated for them. And it took until the last month that they were there, and they were promised housing. And it took advocates from our community stepping forward, coming forward and saying, this is unacceptable if you won't house people who are over 60, who are elders, and who are people with disabilities. We can talk about, where we can do hotel acquisition, but we don't need to be decommissioning these spaces. We need spaces for these folks when we know that one of the fastest growing populations of unhoused people are our elders. And it's because they're on a fixed income and the cost of rent continues, then the cost of housing and rent continues to go up and up.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for reminding me about the metrics. I'm so glad that Shannon mentioned that we should have more metrics. We actually have a host dashboard. So if you're not familiar with metrics, we have a 5-year housing strategic plan, we have a 1-year action plan, and we have dashboard metrics. Happy to provide the web link if you don't have it, where we are tracking. We as in the officers of the city are holding ourselves and housing stability accountable to make sure that we are actually meeting the goals that we said we're going to meet. So, and for what it's worth, every time the disability community has reached out to me, I have responded.
Let's move on to encampment cleanups. Many public health issues have been found at homeless encampments, including human waste, propane tank fires and explosions, used syringes, needles, other drugs, waste, weapons, shootings, etc. Several of these problems were evident within the UpDoNA neighborhood near 1 Lincoln Park at the time of a cleanup there on March 11th of this year. So the question is, do you support health and safety cleanups of homeless encampments to minimize negative health impacts on the campers and others who live and work in adjacent buildings? And if not, what alternatives do you see? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that particular group has been on March 11th. Part of the reason why that has as much attention and perhaps why people recognize that particular date is there was a shooting there in the encampment, and so when one unhoused is shooting another unhoused, that is a clear health, safety, and welfare concern. And again, that is the core role of our city. So yes, I believe that our public health, safety, and welfare mandate that is our core charge as a city includes making sure that our public environment is safe and healthy. So when we do a cleanup, we as in the executive branch, anyway, so when we do a cleanup, we document that we have provided outreach to everyone in that encampment. We have reached out to each individual. We've reached out about services and facilities and opportunities for people to leave the encampment and join a safe outdoor space or other more permanent housing or shelter. And you're right, those the encampments, when they have rats, feces, needles, it is not good for anyone, particularly those who are living in the encampment, to live amongst all of that trash and public health hazards. So we also have outbreaks of hepatitis in our encampments, and it is important that we manage the cleanups to limit it to public health and safety issues, and not just enforce a camping ban, which also is before my time. Really, I definitely support making sure that we have the public health, safety, and welfare of everyone, and that includes making sure that areas around and in campsites are clean.
Shannon?
So if these cleanups truly supported the health and safety of folks and were also an efficient use of money, I would support them. But they do not support the health and safety of folks, and they are not an efficient use of money, which is why I cannot support them. And I know this because I do read reports from the city. I, in fact, have read the HOST 5-year report and share it with folks. And I also read the auditor's report. And the auditor, the city auditor, just came out with a major report about the cost of sweeps and the fact that we do not keep proper records when we are implementing these sweeps. And the impetus of where that report came from was from a group of folks that I was a part of that did a community research study, basically, because we couldn't get information about what is the cost of these sweeps, what is the cost of cleanup, where do we keep documentation about that, and the city auditor took us seriously. Unfortunately, as a citizen of District 10, my opponent would not take me seriously when I took that to his office, but the city auditor did, and now we have this report here which is telling us that this is an inefficient use of our funds. And the piece about this also is that it does not get to the root solution, and you probably see this in your neighborhoods, because a cleanup occurs and then, you know, a week or so later, people come right back. And when we do, what the auditor found is when we do these cleanups, it's the auditor's report said it's costing us upwards of $13 million, but we don't even know, because they couldn't even, the auditor couldn't even get all of the data from the city to figure out what the cost is. So it's not getting to the root solution, and it's wasting your money. So when we're talking about what does get to the root solution, that's talking about rental assistance, that's talking about social housing, motel acquisition, apartment acquisition funds, master leasing, things that actually get people housed. That gets to the root and solves this for all of us.
Chris, your rebuttal.
Yeah, so rental and utility assistance, I've already talked about how I voted to fund it. Apartment and hotel and motel acquisition, we have $250 million in the 2023 budget for housing and homelessness. We've already bought a motel. We did that in January. We bought 2 shelters, or 2 places that we intend to use as shelter, also just in 2023. So we are moving forward with that, but we have unclean streets right now, and we can't. We have to spend a little money right now to make sure that we have a public health, safety, and welfare prioritized city. So, and the auditor's report, he actually said we're mostly compliant, but that we need a little bit of help. So I was actually pretty surprised and impressed, because I was expecting a much more damaging auditor report. So I would recommend you take a look at the executive summary, if not the detail. But the auditor said we were mostly compliant. So thank you.
Shannon, 1 minute to you.
I think whether we want to read the auditor's report or not, and if you just want the top lines, happy to chat with you about it. But if we want to read it or not, we know just by going outside that this issue has not been resolved, and we need leadership around this issue that meets the scale of it, okay? When we're looking at the point in time count, we're talking about 1,000 people in one night that are being found as unhoused. But when we're looking at the report from Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, we're seeing that almost 30,000 people are going in and out of homelessness every single year. We cannot just do this one motel by one motel. We can't do this by, $2 million here or there towards rental assistance. This is a huge crisis, and we have to address it at the scale of the problem.
Let's move on to question 7. It relates to your constituent outreach. City council members each represent a large group of citizens with different interests and concerns. The councilperson's communication with his or her constituents is the primary way many constituents interact with city government. We have different questions for each of you on this topic. Shannon, we'll start with you. After interviews with candidates, the Downtown Denver Partnership published results on its website. Instead of a summary of your position, there's a message that says this candidate did not complete an interview with the Downtown Denver Partnership's Municipal Election Task Force. So the question is, how does your non-participation with DDP reflect your degree of interest in downtown, its residents, and its businesses?
Thank you for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to address this. The truth of the matter is that at that time, my grandmother had actually passed away. and she was someone that I was really close with. My family actually lived with my grandparents for a period of time when I was growing up. We've postponed my grandmother's funeral to the end of our campaign. And it's not an excuse, it was just very challenging. We're candidates and we're human beings, and some things are really challenging. However, that does not preclude that any kind of communication or interaction with folks. I have really welcomed the opportunity to come to these forums. There is going to be a forum with Downtown Denver Partnership that I plan to be at and participate in person. And there have been some other meetings that have been put forward by folks that are developers downtown, that are with the Rockies. So, to me, community conversation is the heart of this campaign, because community members with their lived experiences are the experts on issues. So any opportunity to have conversation, to collaborate, to come up with solutions together is something that I am open to. And yeah, there may be times where that might be hard because of a life issue, but I hope to always circle back and come back to the table.
Chris, should you be reelected to again serve as Denver City Councilman for District 10, what changes or improvements would you implement that you learned from your previous term? For example, there have been complaints from your constituents regarding a lack of responsiveness by your office. How would you address that issue?
Yeah, first of all, I want to, I'm sorry for your loss. I did not know until just now, so I would have reached out sooner, so I'm sorry. That said, this is one of the benefits of, there are a whole bunch of, downfalls with having to run for re-election, or in my case, roll for re-election. There are obviously a bunch of benefits too. One of the benefits is that I've heard from my former opponents. Thank you both Margie and Noah for being here tonight. I did learn from both of them the feedback that that people said that my office and I were not as responsive as we could be. And to be totally transparent, I did not know until I heard the feedback from both of them. So I want to thank them for being honest and open, and so I would say this has been an interesting term for everyone. When COVID hit, we all had to scramble. We had a reduction in budget. I had to lay off a staff member, and government doesn't move quickly, but we had to figure out how to operate entirely virtually when government, from the beginning of time until March of 2020, had to operate entirely in person. That's just one thing that we had to figure out. But since then, I think we've embraced more of the constituent services. A lot of the complaints that I've heard are from COVID time, 2020 and 2021. If you have experience, I would put this out to anyone now in the audience or on tape. If you've experienced any sort of issues with responsiveness, I would encourage you to try again. Also, for what it's worth, we have offers out for 2 aides that, assuming I get reelected, they will start within a month after the reelection. So they want to wait to make sure I'm reelected before they start, but I already have 2 offers out, and we're also embracing technology to make sure that we track all of our constituent interactions.
Shannon, you'll now have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Thank you. I do want to say, though, that I think it's hard to understand that you could not know that you weren't doing significant outreach. That's one of the primary roles of this job. And in fact, that was something that I wanted. I reached out to this office because I wanted to participate in an advisory board group that you were putting together, but then did not come to fruition because of a lot of overturn in your office as well. So I do think that it is a concern, because this is, in addition to, you know, making laws, changing laws, approving the budget, being a community advocate and organizer is one of the most important pieces of this job.
Chris, you'll now have 1 minute.
Yeah, so I own my my mistakes. We learned from those mistakes. We both have reasons why we haven't been responsive in certain situations. I am also, in the next 3 weeks, putting together 4 different town halls for different areas of District 10. This is an area that is not in the current District 10, so I have not extended invitations to you. But we have, as an example, a town hall about scooter safety, and we've invited the folks in Uptown and Golden Triangle to participate. It's an open meeting, so should people in downtown or in upper downtown or lower downtown want to participate, you're welcome to do so as well. But it is not a prudent use of our funds to send postcards to people who are not in the current District 10. But we are expanding our town halls and embracing technology, and we are hiring 2 more staff members as soon as the election ends.
This last question relates to the City of Denver budget. City Council's job is to approve the mayor's budget after offering amendments for him to accept or reject. The flood of federal money flowing into our city coffers is likely to drop significantly in the next 4 years. The question is, if revenue shortfalls soon force a city budget cut of, say, 15%, which areas would you advise the next mayor to cut first and most deeply? Chris, we'll start with you.
So I'll start with the things that I don't think we should cut, and that's downtown. And I think both of our mayors have already committed to the economic revitalization of our downtown, and so that is an example. Mayoral candidates. If only they could both be mayor, but we get to pick one. So both of our mayoral candidates have committed to the economic revitalization of downtown, and I agree with them. Of course, I'm biased because I live downtown and represent downtown, but that is, I think we learned in 2020 the pitfalls and frankly the economic development implications of not focusing on downtown. But as far as the things that we should consider, that's a great question. I hadn't really thought about what sort of things we would cut. I think that I care a lot about making sure that we break Denver's dependence on cars, and that we enhance the pedestrian and cyclist experience. And so I think that one of the things that we could spend less on are widening lanes. Like there's a conversation right now about spending $500 million to widen Pena. And if we're going to spend money to encourage people to get to the airport, I would much rather expand the A-line or expand other non-car transit options. And but if we had to cut $500 million, I would say let's not expand Pena and not spend that money on multimodal transit.
Shannon?
So I think community involvement in the city budget is extremely important, and that's where I would begin when thinking about this question. And that's also one of the reasons why in the program that I talked about how shit gets done in Denver, we had a whole series around the city budget, and we went to bars and coffee shops, and we had community members actually look through the budget booklets that council members get, and to get input from them about what are your priorities. That's a piece of what we saw with the participatory budgeting project in our city that was a pilot, and I was able to participate in that. And one of the ideas that came out of an event that I put on was to have a safe route to school near Morey Middle School. And so community ideas about where we should be spending our money is really, I think, where we should be starting. Then we can also start looking at the places where, are we having some inefficiencies with departments? For instance, we have a department of storytelling. Very interesting, but in times of economic, downturn, is that the place where we need to be prioritizing our dollars? So where do we need to be prioritizing our dollars? Most especially on housing. That is one of the biggest crises in our city. We need to prioritize our dollars towards what truly keeps us healthy and safe, supporting programs like STAR, supporting additional funding for mental health support for people. And we also, especially in times when we need to be prudent, need to do audits of our funding. So we have streams of tax dollars for housing and homelessness, for parks, and it is important for us to be auditing where are those dollars going, are we having an efficient use of those dollars, and how can we prioritize them toward our greatest needs in our city.
Chris, you'll now have 1 minute for a rebuttal.
Yeah, Shannon and I agree. The Office of Storytelling is our current mayor's pet project. It can go away. So great idea. As far as the East Central Area, so as far as community engagement, the East Central Area Plan was a program that didn't affect downtown, but does affect 4 neighborhoods in District 10, and there were concerns about lack of community involvement and engagement. And so I tasked one of my staff members full-time to do train-the-trainer programs and make sure that we had additional engagement for the East Central Area Plan. As a result, we got as many engagement, data points as the Blueprint program, which is a citywide program. So I agree, we definitely need to engage the community. And I'm very proud to say that in the participatory budgeting program, the program that got the most funding was right here in District 10.
Shannon, 1 minute to you.
I think when we're talking about these programs that get a lot of support around East Central Area Plan, around participatory budgeting, that's often because community members came forward and got involved. Community members pushed and said, we also need language justice around these meetings with East Central Area Plan. Community members who weren't paid, ran these participatory budgeting meetings, and we need to acknowledge those folks and their work.
This concludes the pre-prepared question program, or portion of the program. Now each candidate will be afforded the opportunity to ask their opponent 2 questions. The normal 2.5 minutes will be allowed for each answer. The order will be as follows. Chris will ask his first question of Shannon, who will provide her answer. Shannon will pose her first question to Chris, and then we will reverse the order. Shannon will ask Chris her second question, and Chris will ask Shannon his second question. So Chris, if you would please ask your first question to Shannon.
Sure. This was already kind of touched on, but the number 1 priority of City Council is to ensure public health, safety, and welfare. At several different public forums, you have clearly and proudly stated that you want to abolish, as in completely eliminate the police, only after I bring it up. Your website does not mention police abolition, and it offers no explicit plan for public safety at all. Do you not have a fully fleshed out plan for public safety, or do you just not want voters to know your plan?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak more about this. Yes, you have brought this up at every single one of the debates and forums we've had, and you have misrepresented my position on this, as I was able to articulate earlier. And I, have the integrity to say what I think and what I support. I do believe that we should be working toward a future horizon where we are all healthy, safe, and free, where we are all housed. where we have enough food to eat, where we can get around safely from place to place. And as I said, 17% of our calls in the city of Denver relate to crime, and that needs to be addressed, and the rest of the calls need to relate to people's physical safety, mental health, and that's where we need to prioritize those dollars. I'm not ashamed of that, and I'm not ashamed of advocating for people's needs and for people made poor. Those are the people that I come from, and that is my intention, is to advocate for them. And there's nothing to be ashamed about in that, and so it's confusing to me that you continue to bring it up.
Shannon will now ask you for your first question for Chris.
Sure. This was also touched on a bit tonight, but the part of District 10 we are in tonight is a new area, but people in parts of District 10 who were there before redistricting and remain have voiced concerns that you are not responsive to constituent concerns, that you don't listen, and you lack urgency in addressing the most crucial issues in our community, first among them affordable housing and homelessness. How can you expect us to trust your course correct in the next 4 years when you do take money from the landlord lobby, private developers, and even have support from the Denver Republican Party?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll take the last part first. I didn't ask for the GOP endorsement. There was no candidate questionnaire. That just showed up. So I was a bit surprised to get the GOP endorsement, since I had already had the Progressive Democrats of America endorsement. I think that it demonstrates that, to quote the Denver Gazette, the Denver Gazette said that I may have the record for just the sheer number of endorsements. I am a uniter, and having the endorsement of the Progressive Democrats and the GOP, I think is pretty unusual. So I am excited to say that I am a uniter. But to your first point that we have already talked about lack of responsiveness, that is certainly a comment and conversation that I've heard, and am very interested in rectifying. So I have a computer science degree. I'm very interested in embracing technology, and we are in the process right now of, assuming that I get reelected to come back to Denver City Council. We're in the process of identifying software packages that will allow us to track every constituent interaction, so that we can provide specific reporting on how many people have reached out to the office. So we normally get between 400 and 1,000 emails a day. And so being able to tell that, explain that we do get a huge volume of requests is important, but even more important is to make sure that we are responsive. And so we've heard the concerns. All the research that we've done, the concerns have been from a couple of years ago, from right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I would once again invite people who have felt like they were not heard in the past, please do reach out again. The office currently believes that, because we've had multiple conversations in the last few weeks, because of comments from Noah and Margie and others, and we believe that we are responsive and have been in 2023. So if you disagree, please let us know. I'd love to have that conversation.
Shannon, please go ahead and ask your second question.
Thanks. Both renters and homeowners are seeing astronomical increases in our rent and property taxes. You did nothing to address these problems when we saw them coming before they became full-blown crises. And you take credit for the work and success of community advocates and your colleagues like Eviction Defense, which was led by grassroots groups No Eviction Without Representation and council members Sedabaca and Sawyer. You lack meaningful or urgent support for the housing crisis solutions that advocates have been asking for from you for years. How do you answer for this inaction and oftentimes obstruction of these important bills?
I disagree that there's obstruction. I guess inaction is a matter of opinion, but But I would say, while I did not work with, I was not the prime sponsor as Councilmember Sawyer was, I did work with the Colorado Eviction Defense Project on multiple occasions, held multiple seminars. Your campaign team came to one of them. And so you know that that I was hosting these seminars. Zach Newman, the founder of the Colorado Eviction Defense Project, and I have collaborated on several different, not only seminars, but other ways that we can provide eviction defense and assistance for those in need. As most people hopefully know at this point, District 10 is majority renter, or the Denver's majority renter, District 10 is 70% renter, and we need to make sure that that we are advocating for the people who elected us. I'm advocating for the 70% of the people who are renters in our city, and that means making sure that they have a habitable place to live, that there are basic habitability requirements in our city. And that tenants have eviction defense. So if there's a legitimate reason for a tenant to get evicted, they will still get evicted. But right now there's a knowledge disparity and a power disparity between property owners who always 90+% of the time engage attorneys in the eviction defense process, and the tenant who less than 5% of the time, until we pass this into law, is represented in the eviction process. We've passed it into law, and anyone who is 80% of the area median income or below gets free legal help with eviction defense. And those are just a couple examples of how we are protecting renters and making sure that that folks who are struggling to make ends meet and are housing insecure can remain in their house, because it's far cheaper and the right thing to do for us to make sure that people remain in their homes rather than end up on our streets.
Chris, we'll now ask you to please ask your second question to Shannon.
All right, Shannon, you often throw out the idea of social housing to solve the housing crisis. Let's just say there is a path forward for social housing, as in we're disagreeing on whether it is legal for the city to provide social housing. But let's say there is a path forward, and organizing the city resources, employees, builders, and planners will take time. Could take years, maybe even a decade, for the only infrastructure to be in place to move forward with social housing. In the meantime, what is your plan to address the housing crisis right now?
Thanks for the question. Yes, social housing is one of many levers that we should be pulling in order to address our housing crisis. And so just to briefly describe social housing before talking about the other levers, social housing is municipal-owned housing where people do not pay more than 30% of their income on rent, because that is the definition of what affordable housing is. We have had folks that have worked on our campaign team that are lawyers and have spoke with folks at the state level that find this to be a viable option. We also know that through Prop 123 that recently passed, that we can get money that comes from the state level directly to the municipality. And of course, we have Denver Housing Authority, so it's not totally unfeasible that we just don't look at totally reimagining Denver Housing Authority, making it have folks that are appointed by city council members that have some accountability there, and also where we put public or city dollars into Denver Housing Authority instead of simply relying and waiting on federal funds that do not come. But yes, as someone who's worked on an affordable housing project, I'm very aware that it takes us a long period of time to get the money, to get the developer, to get this, to get the SDP approved, and then to break ground on a project. I've gone through those steps. So we do need to leverage other tools. Those can include apartment acquisition funds, where we give the opportunity to renters to purchase their apartment building and to have an opportunity to stabilize rent. This could also be supporting cooperative housing models where folks are, keeping historic homes together, reducing folks' rent, having an opportunity to build equity. We could be, taking city homes and providing them at low cost to these organizations. We could be doing motel acquisition funds where we're purchasing motels and flipping them. There are so many tools that are available to us. All it takes is the political will and leadership to move forward on these topics.
We'll now move into the final closing statements from each of our candidates. Each of you will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for your summary. Shannon, we'll begin with you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here with you all tonight and to speak with you about the issues that matter to you. That is what's most important to me, is really to be a conduit and a community collaborator with folks. I really believe that you are the experts on the issues that you live every day. It's also a really important opportunity to learn together. As I said, I've been an educator for more than 10 years, so learning in community is extremely important to me. And learning together about how we're going to address the most pressing issues in our community, that's what matters to all of us. And we know that issue is our housing and homelessness crisis, and we know that the way to address that is to house people. So thank you all for the opportunity to chat, and I hope that we might have some more time to talk one-on-one afterwards. My name is Shannon Hoffman. I would love to earn your vote on June 6th. You should be getting your ballot in the mail on May 15th.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for participating in the democratic process. Our democracy is stronger when we all participate. And given our last, even the April 4th election, we saw a 25% lower turnout than even in the 2019 election. So thank you so much for being here and for participating. I was elected in a tough time. COVID struck right after I was inaugurated, and this has been a really difficult time for our city, our country, and frankly our planet. COVID didn't limit itself to even the United States. I'm really excited. We're at an inflection point here in our city, but I'm really excited for the next 4 years of our city. I have forged the relationships of the last 4 years with city staff, with influencers in the city, with neighbors and neighborhood organizations. Here we are establishing relationships with new areas that will be part of the new District 10, and I'm very happy to. I would love to be your council member for the next 4 years. I would love to be there. I was there for the groundbreaking of the 16th Street Mall. I would love to be there for the ribbon cutting. I would love to be there to be part of that economic infusion, the millions of dollars that we rightfully should be providing for economic incentives for businesses to return to the 16th Street Mall. An activated 16th Street Mall is great for business, it's great for community, it's great for safety, and so I feel honored being a small, a kid from a small town in rural Texas to serve on council in the largest city in in the state of Colorado, and I'm very excited about the options, the possibilities that we have here in our city of Denver. The inflection point is, do we need a police department? I think the answer is yes. If you think the answer is yes, I would love to have your vote. My name is Chris Hines. Serve on Denver City Council now. I would love to return for another 4 years. You can go to chrisfordenver.com, and obviously you can also reach out to my office. I'm here and available for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our candidate debate for Denver City Council District 10. Ballots will be mailed out on May 15th. Your last day to vote is June 6th. Please don't forget to cast your vote, and in a not-so-shameless plug, you can catch me covering these issues and much more every night at 5, 6, and 10 on CBS News Colorado. On behalf of the Upper and Lower Downtown Neighborhood Associations, thank you to our candidates, as well as the audience, and to our police officers for being here tonight. Once again, thank you to the Denver Chamber of Commerce for providing this space for us. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful evening.